The block we'll be doing today is actually a treat because it looks pretty simple. This one is H-13, also called Farm Fields. Now with this block, you can see it just is one big X going through the center of it. But I'm not going to applique. We're going to cut 4 triangles and 1 long strip and 2 smaller strips. For my fabric today, I've chosen this red fabric. You can see I've already got it cut into triangles, and I will talk a little bit about the sizes I'm going to be doing. And then my background, or the contrast for this one, is my muslin fabric. So let's take a look at how I'm going to cut out the fabric for this quilt block. From this red fabric, I cut a square about 5.5 inches. And then I made 2 cuts on the diagonal. So that gave me my 4 triangles. Now in between these triangles are basically 3 strips. We have 2 shorter strips. The 2 small strips I cut to be 1 inch wide by about 4 inches long. So those will be sewn in. And then this long strip is also 1 inch wide, but it is about 8 inches long. So then I'll be sewing all of these together. So my first part that I will do, I will sew these triangles to this strip on either side. I'll mark my stitching line along the edges of these strips and then pin the triangles to it and sew it together. Both halves of this block is sewn together, and now we need to just sew this center strip into the middle. It's really quite simple, but the more simple a block is, the more precise you need it to be, because any little bobble or deviation off of your line is going to show up really well, and we don't want any little mistakes. I'm going to try to get this as precise as I can. So I'm going to, I just have my ruler. It doesn't really matter the measurements, but what I want to do is line this up so that I will have my lines coming precisely. So I'm actually just going to use the center line right here. That's going to go right down the center of my strip. And the lines match up precisely on either side, 1/4 of an inch on either side. I'm going to get my pencil and just mark right there on either side. That's where I need to have my fabric of this strip line up right where the seams are here. Now I want it to be the exact same, so I'm not moving it. Those little marks are still right under there, and I am going to mark also straight across. And that is going to line up with my strip over here. But you can see my mark here and my mark here. Those are going to line up precisely. If I match these little marks to where these seams are, then it's going to line up pretty straight right across the edge there. So I'm going to pin one side. And I first start with marking that. See right there, my pin's going to go right into that line, and it's going right into the seam. And I will mark the line on the other side. Right into that line, and right into the seam on the other side. So I will stitch this line here, I'll press it open, and then I'll pin on the other side. I have the strip sewn to one side, and now I'm going to flip it over, and there are my 2 marks for matching up to this seam to these seams over here. So raw edges together, and here is one mark, pull right through there and right through the seam on the other side. And here is the other mark, right through that and through the seam on the other side. Now we'll pin the whole thing and sew that seam down. I've sewn the last seam, and you can see how that is almost exact right there. Can't get it much more perfect than that. So now I'm going to trim this block and then show you the final one. So when I'm trimming this block, because that is so exact, this should be relatively easy to trim. So I'm going to line up my center line. The diagonal goes right across, and you can see my center line is going right through the points there, that triangle, and my side center line is going right through the points of that triangle. So let's trim up this block. And there is the finished block H-13, also called Farm Fields. This block only took me about an hour to make, and that included my stopping to record in the middle of it. So this should be a nice reprieve for you from some of the other more complicated blocks that Jane has in her quilt. If you enjoyed this sew along, you can give a like to this video. You can also subscribe to my channel. And if you want to be notified each time I upload a video, which is every Monday, you can hit that little notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below or send me an email at sewitseamscreations@outlook.com. This is Veronica Johnson with Sew It Seams, and I'll see you next time.